challenge.
Okay. Welcome. Thanks for coming on, Sam. Sam Malone, spoken voice and executive presence coach. He teaches at some of the top drama schools in the world, including the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama and RADA, which is the U.S. equivalent to a Juilliard. His students play the main roles on shows such as Hadestown, Mamma Mia, Mean Girls, and more. He also works with executives and senior leaders at companies like Wagamama, Accenture, and more. Sam, welcome to the show, and thank you for doing this today.
Well, thanks so much, and thanks for having me.
You know, you have a book coming out later this fall, and that's why I had messaged you initially on Facebook. The title of the book, remind me one more time.
It's called Why They Can't Hear You.
Why They Can't Hear You. And I think what we kind of discussed before hitting record is we had talked a lot about finding that voice and maybe being tense in the nervous system is what might be hindering that voice. So I asked you to come on today to kind of tell your story, tell us about the book, and go from there. So here at the beginning, how did you get into spoken voice work in the first place?
Yeah, I thank you so much for having me, Jesse. It's great being on the show. I'm really excited to be here. So I think growing up in Canada, I know my accent can be very similar to American in some ways. It was very lovely to grow up in kind of like a small town, rural kind of area. But at the time, I wasn't the coolest of people. And so sometimes people would like say slurs to me or like some other insults at the time. And I was doing an undergrad in business, and I almost took a double major in acting. And my spoken voice teacher became my mentor at the time. And I had asked her name's Dawn. And I said, Dawn, like people like keep bugging me and like making me feel bad. What can I do to change this? I want you to teach me how to shift my voice and my movement when I am feeling unsafe. And so she did teach me how to switch my voice and to make it powerful, or at least switch it upon command when I was feeling unsafe. And that's when I fell in love with spoken voice work, which is an acting craft practice. And I think it's a lot different than just regular public speaking because it develops your voice and your body. And that's really how I fell into the work, because I think it can really help people shift their lives and make changes to the way people perceive them and treat them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you went through is what a lot of us go through is when we encounter comments that discourage us, it often becomes like a point of embarrassment. And I think it's natural, or as we spoke about before recording, maybe habitual to hide, not physically, but verbally, right? How did the transition of finding your voice turn into theater? What you said, you were already double majoring in acting. So did the theater come first, or did the voice work come before kind of being in that theater field?
So I think that people just think of acting as kind of like standing up and pretending. And in a lot of ways it is. But obviously you need to be so good at pretending that people believe you, because otherwise you're a bad actor. I think that I started taking the theater courses because that's what I really wanted to do, but my parents wanted me to do business. And the business degree has paid off. I will give them credit for that. Like, it helps me run my business and those things. But theater work, the practice, so the acting practice, the character development, the movement, so how you move in a space for a character, the spoken voice work, so how you take up physical and vocal space. So what is vocal space? How am I being heard by an audience? How am I being heard in a meeting room? How am I heard in my relationship? When you have a more open voice and are more audible, you take up more vocal space. I'm not saying I need to speak all the time, but I might be able to take up that vocal space and be heard. And so, yes, I started with theater work, which is, I would say, almost like sociology or psychology applied. I always say to people, go take acting classes. And yes, you'll apply it to a character, but you'll also learn a lot about yourself. like the way you're breathing, the way you're moving, the way you're holding yourself, the energy levels that you come into the room with. So I would say those are the main key points of theater. And then I switched over into spoken voice because I felt like it was this like hidden world where people learned how to command attention. So in class today, I had a student get up at the very end of class. It was their second voice class at Central.
Okay.
And I had the students stand up and I got them to do all these crazy things. Like I'm readjusting their posture. I'm teaching them how to breathe. And then their audibility, so their decibels go up.
Okay.
And people were like, he just commanded so much attention by the way he was speaking. And it wasn't about being loud.
Yeah.
But it was like his nervous system relaxing, his connective tissue and body and everything opening up. And then his voice, therefore, taking up more vocal space. And then the students were like, wow, it's just like he had so much more presence. How did you do that? Like, and I can see how that applies in my day-to-day life.
Yeah. So you and I, the first time we spoke, we kind of talked a little bit about what you're mentioning right now. When I had asked you about potentially doing some classes with you, you said, well, it's more of like there's a physical touch to it. And when you mention posture, when you're adjusting your students like that in front of a class, does then the body of the person that you are reposturing start to habitually remember that posture and connect those dots? Because obviously you can't be there all the time to hold them up straight or to calm them down, right? So is that kind of the science behind it?
So I think you're completely bang on the point. So I would say that the body tends to hold itself in states of habitual stress, which is different compared to natural. So am I constantly stressed or worried or feeling down or sluggish, which are two very different nervous system states, or am I in a social relaxed state? And my students, whether that is drama conservatoire students, West End actors, executives, senior leaders, they all carry with them levels of tension in their body, which I would call survival tension. So musculoskeletal, so muscles and skeleton, and or connective tissue, and then the way their nervous system works as well. And because the way the body works, in my opinion, now I'm not a super big neuroscientist, I'm starting to work with osteopaths, physiotherapists, and neuroscientists. We hold these tensions in our body, that survival tension, and then the voice work starts to unravel it. So yes, I help them find their posture, and then their body starts to remember what natural is. So if you look at young children, infants and young children, a lot of the time they have really good posture.
Yeah.
Their whole body breathes.
Yes.
Their voices are really loud, and there is like their larynxes are shorter, so they will be more loud in general, but their voices don't get tired. They move and have a very straight posture.
Yeah.
So through the spoken voice work, we are unraveling that old tension. I had one student, she had a scoliosis in her spine, and she literally grew 3 inches over the summer when she went and did the work I had given her to do.
Wow.
On her spine. And you go from high status to low status through that hands-on kind of work. Now, it takes time and it is a practice, and we do a lot of hands-on each other work because that's the way my practice works when I'm teaching that. And you have to work on things like consent, on how do we make contact with other people.
Sure.
But
right.
Yeah. And so, but how do we get the body to open up so that the voice opens? Because if your body's tight and you're stressed, the voice won't open. It's like if I'm going, oh, please give me some money to buy this product or buy my product. That's a lot different than I'd like you to buy my product. And here's the reasons why. And just being able to calm my body, be a bit more still, not always. Not always stillness is a great thing. and using that gravitas of voice and posture to have more of that presence in general and in a tangible way, not just being like, think like a leader.
Yeah, you point out something that I had realized a few weeks ago. I had spoke of an event that had stressed me out. I was on a one-on-one Zoom call with with my speech teacher, and he had said, your shoulders are at your ears right now. And I didn't even notice it. So I can totally see how it can make somebody, I guess, go into that survival instinct.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see, because you work with all sorts of different, let's say, clients or students, what do you see like the main difference between somebody that's an executive to somebody that's maybe trying to find their voice to maybe somebody that's trying to go into the arts or the conservatoires?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the conservatoires,
Yeah.
high-end drama schools.
Yeah.
So the question is, if the difference between the executive and the way they speak or the actor, is that what you mean?
How do they handle stress? Is the posture of the body different between students? Or is it pretty much the same thing that you're unraveling every time?
So I would say every body and every voice is different.
Okay.
So I can give you sweeping generalizations, but they usually break down into 2 or 3 different areas. One, are they bluffing or overly zealous? So there's a famous voice teacher named Patsy Rodenberg who talks about the bluff. Are they trying to be too powerful and then we think you're bluffing? Or are they hiding away? And she talks about those as spheres of influence. And I would agree. Are they too big or too small? And so every person's slightly different. Executives tend to be a bit more vulnerability adverse in the sense that they don't want to look silly, especially in a corporate context. The drama students are willing to go do things and try things, but they both come with their own tension patterns that are to the individual. So when your speech coach said your shoulders are raised, that's really interesting. Now, for your listeners, what is the difference between a spoken voice coach and a public speaking coach? A public speaking coach will say, you need to say things like this. It needs to be slow. It needs to be like at this pitch, etc. But a spoken voice coach, we are looking at your body, your voice, your breath. In my case, I add in nervous system work and connective tissue work. That's not something necessarily a lot of voice teachers are doing. I'm pretty on the front foot on that. There may be some others that I'm unaware of. But for example, are you only using your nasal resonators, your top of mouth resonators, your chest? Where are you most often placing your voice? And is it in balance or not?
I see. Interesting. It seems like you've carved out a really a niche in this space. What, I guess, how did I know we've already kind of talked about how you've got here, but how did you end up discovering this?
Yeah, so I think my spoken voice teacher was the one who introduced me to this type of work. And at first I thought it was really weird. Like, you're making all these weird noises, like maybe like a huh or like a he and all those kinds of things. But then, like, for example, I just noticed my shoulders coming up. And that internal awareness, my voice teacher self said, oh, you're going back to a habitual tension. Let's let it go. And then I went and did the Canadian National Voice Intensive, which doesn't necessarily exist anymore. It was a month-long voice course. So like 6 to 10 hours a day of voice for 6 days a week for 4 weeks.
Wow.
And yes, you were applying it to Shakespeare and acting, but I came back so vocally. I didn't mean to be loud, but my voice would just carry. Some people, it's to the point they're like, your voice is so disruptive. Even yawning is disruptive. But then I'll remind, and this is like in a big office, and people are in their own rooms, and they said my yawns were disruptive.
Okay, well, Might be
but
valid.
I was taking up vocal space. My voice was being heard. I would say something and everyone would stop and listen.
Yeah. When you mention where's the voice coming from, the nasal receptors, the different spaces, where should the voice come from?
I would argue that you need a balance. So in that way, I believe in like yin and yang should always be in balance. So I have a tendency to sit up here. Most North Americans sit up here. I need to probably work a little bit on my chest. So if I let my voice go down into my chest a bit more, you can start to hear the shift. But then you get those guys who are down here and everything's like hyper masculinated.
Yeah.
If you think low pitches equal masculine, that's a whole other discussion.
Sure.
Because you'll have very deep feminine voices, etc.
Yeah.
So now that I've done a little bit of it, my chest is coming back in. Now, if I bring it up into my nose a little bit, we don't want either or. So now that I'm doing all of them at once, you're starting to get more rounded sound, and that has more impact. And people respond to all those different parts of the voices a lot more.
That was so impressive.
It is what I don't know about.
Is this kind of what impressionists go through as well? You know, I see different comedians that'll play Dr. Phil, or Frank Caliendo plays John Gruden. Is that kind of an example of them pulling the voice from different parts of their body? Is that?
So I would say that they're probably better at manipulating using different resonators, different consonants and vowels when they speak.
Okay.
So most accents are just a consonant and a vowel shift, mostly.
Okay.
So if I say coffee, and if I was doing in Korean, there's no F sound. It's not coffee, it's kopi. Okay. You can start to hear the accent change.
I see. So it's not so much finding the voice, so to speak. It's more so determining the vowels and the consonants that determine the accent.
Yes,
with the combination like of rhythm.
Yes, rhythm, melody, etc. It's all, I would all classify it under the umbrella of voice.
Okay.
But even if I'm doing like a Yoda voice, it's not necessarily not coming from me. So who is it coming from? It's coming from me. So people will be like, that's not your voice. And I go, well, whose voice is it? They don't know how to respond to that.
Yeah, I don't either. It is your voice, is it not? I mean, not the voice you typically use, but it's coming out of your body. Unless if we want to go super deep, you're having an out-of-body experience when you are impersonating something.
And I would say that I am not. I can't speak for other people, but is your habitual voice serving you? I'm not saying you need to switch it so that people don't recognize your voice, but I'm saying, is your level of audibility, your level of clarity, your speed at which you speak serving you in the moment that you need it to speak?
That's incredibly crucial. And you're right to have that self-aware outlook. Is your voice serving you the way you want it to serve you? If you're able to command a room or articulate a message in a super effective way, like you said, all of a sudden your voice in the office, everybody's now, you're commanding the room with the impact of your voice. So overall, it seems to me that this is an incredibly crucial tool that outside of the arts, I would say isn't really taught throughout school.
Unless you're ruling elite, politics ruling elite, or high-level executives. Most people in politics have had a spoken voice coach. I know because I know people who've taught them.
And I completely believe that. When you look at some of even the high-end media influencers, these are all people that have gone to special schools, took special courses, and just happen to be in the places of the biggest voice, in the nation or in the world, right?
So the thing about acting and speaking is there is a craft behind it. Like, you can train confidence, you can train presence, you can train to get people to listen. And there is even a craft about how to manipulate people using your voice and words into thinking things. That is called rhetoric. Now, that's like how you use your words to make people feel something. So if I'm speaking very quickly like this, it starts to make you think that there's some sort of danger at a conscious level, unconscious level. Your body's starting to go, whoa. Your breath starts to get short. You start to mimic me through your mirror neurons. So your body's way of having empathy. There's other ways of saying how narrative will pull you in more than, say, logic. Now, these are all the technical writing skills of a speech. Then it's your ability to perform them, which is the spoken voice work and your movement work that really sucks people in.
It's essentially the complete picture. And again, finding that voice is that tool that not anybody that went through the public school system or pretty much the general citizenship hasn't gone through, unless they are like entering that art space, or as you said, elitist, politician, whatever. Let's shift gears a little bit. Talk about your book. When is it coming out? Do you have a date?
So it should be out in about December. So we're doing final edits now.
Okay.
I believe it will be on Amazon and a few bookstores in the UK, but it'll be internationally available on things like Amazon. I am not sure in terms of like US as of yet, because I'm in the UK and I have a UK publisher. Is there anything you wanted to know about the book in terms of like...
Yeah, I have questions about the book, but before I ask about the book, I'm really curious about the process of writing a book. You are one of the first people I've spoken to that has taken the time to really, put together their work on paper, and that, in my eyes, is incredibly inspiring. And I would like to know what the process looks like from the beginning. When did the idea start, and then how did you put the idea into paper with an outline, and how were you able to craft your curriculum, let's say, if it is more about finding your voice, in a way that the reader can stay engaged?
So, okay, audience members, we'll see if their ears perk up when I say this. Yeah. Okay, audience members, I'm going to give you 3 key details on how I wrote the book and why it'll make your audience engaged.
Okay.
So number 1, you need to think about, as a writer, what is in it for your audience at an emotional level. What do they want, and what do you want them to feel? If you're going to give them this educational piece, why are you doing it? My voice book, so Why They Can't Hear You, a practical guide to being heard. It is for people who don't feel heard in the boardroom, in their relationship, by their children. They feel like they're being overlooked in leadership roles. They get nervous to speak up in front of other colleagues. I want them to feel empowered. From page 1, I want them to feel empowered, and at the end as well. Now, I'm going to take them on that emotional journey in the book. So that's number 1.
Okay.
Number 2, I do think that you should be using things that are relevant in terms of narrative. So I can say 700 people increase their ability to become leaders when they stop talking in vocal fry. Or I can say, I was working with an executive, and every time he'd speak in vocal fry.
Okay.
And people might lean in, but they also might not listen to him, and he wasn't getting roles for work. Because statistically, we know that 80% of people are less likely to get a job if you have vocal fry. That was based on a study. Okay. And notice right now, even the way I'm speaking, I'm starting to pull you in.
Yeah, I'm very curious about vocal fry.
Yeah, so I'm pulling you in with the craft.
You sure are. This is going to be a good book.
So number 3.
Number 3. Number 3. Let's put a pin in that and circle back.
Number 3 to writing a good book and getting people engaged is you need to simplify, simplify, simplify. I can talk about rhetoric. I can talk about resonance, but I need to make all of that accessible. Resonance is vibration and how your voice vibrates, and it kind of gives depth to your sound. That's a lot different than just saying resonance. I need to make it accessible for the audience. So how can I make the person listening really want to buy into what I'm saying? I think if you start with those 3 things, that's what's going to make your audience members, in terms of the readers, want to engage with your book. Did that answer your question?
It does answer my question, and it's so well thought out. And, for the listeners, I didn't give you that question in advance, but the way you answered it was so eloquent. And I'm curious now about vocal fry. Are you saying vocal fry is when, because you went kind of raspy and deep every time you said it, is that an example of vocal fry where the voice is burnt out? Fry? Is that what that, or am I completely wrong?
So vocal fry is when you are grinding your vocal folds together because you're not having any air go through. Okay. So it can be at a low pitch. You see it in things like A Star Is Born, where they talk like this. And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to talk like this, vocal fry. Okay?
Okay.
But you also get it like up here, where you get the people who are like, oh my gosh, it's like crazy. And so vocal fry can have different like pitch frequencies.
Okay.
But where it stems from, what people don't know about this, is that on the west coast of the US, you used to have the Valley Girl, and I use air quotes on that.
Yes.
Inflection, where it goes, oh my gosh, like that's so amazing. And people were told that they sounded incompetent or silly or stupid. So incompetent means stupid, like not competent. I just need to make sure that people understand.
For anybody that's stupid, incompetent means stupid.
No, but that's not what I meant. But in the sense that I'm trying to work on using more accessible language. Because again, some people might not know what incompetent means. It's true. But so let's dial it back.
All right.
So if you're using vocal fry where you're talking like this or talking like this, and the second one was probably less vocal fry. The West Coast used to use that kind of, oh my gosh, this is like so amazing, or like, hey, like, and you would get New Yorkers saying like they sound like that, which is a very different tone to what they might use.
Yes.
But the thing is, they stopped going up, so they started to go down because they weren't being respected if they go up.
Mm-hmm.
So then they went down, in particularly women's voices.
Yeah.
So now if you do it too much, can ruin your vocal folds.
Okay.
And now it's being again viewed as not very smart, not very capable.
Sure.
So what are you supposed to do? You need to learn to use your range. You need to learn to use the craft and use your full range, because if you go up or down, people might stop respecting you. That's where vocal fry comes in. And now my voice, I can feel that it's a bit like, oh, stop vocal frying, because there's no air, which is like helps soften the use of the voice. That's why you need breath.
It's kind of what you mentioned a little bit earlier, the yin and yang, or the yin and yang, as you, I think, pronounced it, which is fine, is essentially you're using that range from where you're capable. Yes. And that's essentially unlocking all of that internal power, is having the ability to effectively control that range.
Well, exactly. And you have to remember that almost all young people, men, women, in their adolescence, a lot of them are vocal frying because it's quote unquote cool.
Yeah.
But also the thing about vocal fry, it's a bit different on here. But in a meeting room, it becomes very hard to hear. And if you think about it at like an actual pitch level and resonance, the vibration, you cannot really get the emotion I'm doing. This is really important to me. Doesn't sound important to me because it's all kind of at one note. So that's where vocal fry is causing voice problems, but it's also stopping people from getting jobs. It's getting them from being heard. It's people might talk over you immediately. So it's very mindful if you have young people in your life that they become aware, especially at the end of sentences. They'll go, Sam, this is such a great... What?
Yeah. I've got a little one that likes to do that, actually. And we call it out quite a bit. So hopefully that smooths out a little bit. I know that you're not working in the medical field, but you had said that you are working with people that are working in the medical field. Do you feel like that vocal fry can eventually hurt somebody's breathing patterns, loss of breath, if the vocal cords do fry or burn out? And the reason why I ask that is I have somebody in my life who was told for years that they have COPD and they have breathing issues because they have problems breathing, right? Well, we ended up going to a vocal specialist and they said the reason for the breathing isn't COPD, the vocal cords are fried. Is not the exact terminology, but they said they're ruined. Have you seen any studies or heard anything about the way somebody talks might actually affect the way they breathe when they're older?
So I'm going to say something a bit controversial.
Yeah, let's hear it.
A lot of people talk to me about running out of breath and their voices being tired post-COVID. A lot of people.
Like a long COVID.
Like a long COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, there is long COVID. I work with an infectious disease doctor. Long COVID is a real thing.
It is, yeah.
However, I have also dealt with people who aren't even actors who have had vocal problems since COVID. And to me, it was improper use of breath and their voice. From all the coughing, it left their voice tight, like their larynx, their throat really tight. And when they learned to open it, their voice was coming back. So I think in terms of your friend, that was probably acid reflux. So actually burning the vocal folds versus vocal fry, which is just about loss of air, but it can create problems.
Sure.
But I would say that for individuals who may be having a voice problem, you need to see a spoken voice coach. I'm not saying a singing coach. That's different because when you sing, you maintain the sound. And so it's a different skill set to speaking. You're breaking up the sound all the time when you're speaking. And when you do that, then you'll be able to probably come back into your vocal power. For example, if you've ever been told, listeners, that you have a small voice, I almost guarantee you, 99% of you, unless it's something super medical, do not have a small voice. You don't know how to let your big voice out. And it's not a gendered thing. It's just how to let your big sound out.
I agree with you. That's something that I'm personally working on. I've been working on for a few months because for so long, I just always kept to myself. And as we've kind of talked about, it's something that's incredibly important, is finding that, because it changes everything.
Well, and it will take time. Like voice work takes time. Yeah. So if you look at my first year students versus third year, their bodies and voices are completely different. Not in the sense that I've changed their voice, but that they're more full and open and have more presence, more confidence in their bodies, in their nervous system, in their voice.
Definitely. Let's go back to the book, since we went off on a little side rail. So we talked about your process. What we really haven't talked about yet, what the book is actually about. Fill us in.
Yeah. So The book goes through 3 main stages. The first one is, what is spoken voice? Obviously, we kind of talked about it a little bit already. Then number 2 is how our experiences in life have triggered our nervous system and our fascia. So fascia being the connective tissue, and our bodies, and how our voices got tight. And we stopped taking up physical and vocal space that we were naturally embodying as children. And so that's the main reason people feel overlooked. And from my work, they go, even where I look in my day-to-day life, if I'm always looking down, I'm noticing I'm looking down, Sam. That's a habit. Like, that's something really small.
Mm-hmm.
But that, when did your body shut down? When did your voice shut down? And it doesn't need to be big T trauma. It could be like, you were just in London and it's really noisy and you're keeping to yourself and one person yelled at you one time. I don't know. Or it could be something bigger than that. Now, the next thing that we do is then, how do we open the voice? I had a student come up to me today and she said, I am stressed. I can't seem to feel what we're talking about in class. And I said, well, you're becoming aware of the tension you hold. And until you become aware of that and your nervous system, it won't relax. You need to build that awareness. So I said to her, look at your jaw, look at your shoulders, look at your arms. You're tensing right now. I can sense the energy coming up, the yang, the yang energy going up. It needs to yin, it needs to come down. But that will take time. And so that's what we talk about in the book. And in that second section as well, I speak about maybe the biases you face. Male biases towards men's voices, biases towards women's voices, biases to more global majority, LGBTQ. I'm not saying if anything's right or wrong, but I'm saying this may have occurred. This may be the bias you face. Does your accent mean that some people think you're uneducated or you're not smart, even if you're not educated, that you're not smart? Is the speed at which you speak making people think that you're flippant, like that you don't care? Or maybe if you're constantly being told you don't have manly enough of a voice, what did that do to your voice? All those kinds of things.
Yeah. And it seems like the message of the book, outside of finding the voice, is becoming self-aware, which I think is something that is really lost in society, is self-awareness. At least here in America, I know that we're in different countries and they're, different nationalities act a little bit different in public, but self-awareness is just one of, I would say, the biggest tools, from what you're saying, to finding your voice.
Yeah. And I think that one of the questions we ask in theater school, so if you were behind the scenes with us.
Yeah. Let's fill me in on that.
If you were behind the scenes with us in a drama school room, I go, what energy are the students bringing into the space? What energy are you bringing into your life? And don't get me wrong, if your body is tight and your nervous system is stressed and it doesn't know how to relax, you are likely to bring that energy in again. That's why, like, public speaking coach will be like, go up and like trial by fire, you'll be confident. I'm like, no, their body's tense. Their nervous system's tense, and they're carrying that energy. And yes, they will get some of that exposure therapy from standing up in front of people, but we need to learn to breathe. We need to really learn to let go of that survival tension. And that's when the change will happen.
Yeah, I 100% agree. What is it like behind the scenes?
I think behind the scenes is very much, my students are going to die when I say this. It very much becomes conversations. So it might be like, so I wonder when Jesse is going to stop doing jaw tension.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what I mean? I'm just using you as like a fake example.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Or like, I wonder when so-and-so is going to let go of that bluff, that mask.
And are we saying this to each other's faces in a
No,
circle?
this is to us as teachers talking about how do we
Okay.
get them
I
past
see.
those blocks. And
I
yes,
see.
we do say it to them as well.
Right. I get what you're saying now. The behind the scenes with the teachers gathering is what you're.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I think that's normal and part of that school. So like I might not be able to get them to do something until their body releases more. And so I might be like, movement teacher, hey, I've been trying to get them to do this vocal thing, but they're holding so much tension here. Can you help them with that? Or can you help them find a different energy? And they go, yeah. So it's conversations you would almost like never hear before, where I'll be like, oh yeah, so and so still gets really quiet when they speak, when they do this. Have you noticed that? And they go, yeah, I've noticed that, etc. Those kinds of things. That's what I meant behind the scenes.
I
Is that
see
what
it.
you meant?
Yes.
Yeah.
So when you say, you just said something that I have a question about, when you say so and so gets quiet when they say this thing, are you able to determine that they get quiet because maybe they're not confident in what they're saying compared to getting quiet because they're stressed? Is there some sort of sign that suggests one or the other, or is that just through dialogue with the student?
I'm going to give you the simple answer first.
Yeah. Okay.
So, if you are trailing off the end of your sentences and losing your audibility, that could be one of a few reasons, but the main reasons that stick out to me, audience members, is that you've ran out of breath because you don't have enough breath support and you need to work on your breath. We know breathing is directly correlated to how long you'll live.
Yeah.
It's on a episode of Diary of a CEO. A breathing specialist.
Yeah.
And we also know that if you're devoicing, to me, that screams that you don't feel like you're worth being heard.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone said that to you. I don't know if you just feel like you're taking up too much time and space, which tells me overall that you don't believe like you should be heard. And it makes me think, okay, if you're going to do that in this arena, what are you going to do in the other arena? What are you going to do it in the interview when you're delivering feedback?
A lot worse, most likely.
Yeah. And so I think that's the simple answer. Now, it might be more complex in a theater school because maybe for character reasons, the character that the student's playing maybe is a bit more scared or introverted. But even then, they still have to share their voice out to the audience to be heard. And that's where, if your voice is powerful and open enough, even if you're like going in on yourself, people will hear you and be with you and be able to connect with you. But that's the more complicated answer.
Okay. Yeah. What do you hope people take away from your book?
I hope people take away the practices so that when their body and nervous system starts to shift, and now everyone's different. Not every exercise is going to work for everyone. And these are very general. If I'm working with someone in person, I'm much more like I can see and sense what needs to change very quickly for you. That's kind of what I'm known for. I can go, you can just move like this, and their voice comes out. It's obviously different in a book. I can't be there with you. But I'd hope that they start to realize where they're minimizing themselves in their life, both physically and vocally. And then the work should start to unwind that. And hopefully they find a spoken voice coach, whether it's me or someone else, that would help them come into their power.
The challenge with that is finding somebody that is in the same niche as you, because there are voice coaches 100%. But as we were kind of talking about earlier, you had mentioned you're one of the few that are doing it. Do you, what does your, I guess, your future dream look like, your dream scenario in 5 to 10 years? Do you have some sort of dream of kind of rolling out this curriculum to other teachers internationally to spread this tool that you've built?
So I would say that I'm trying to take spoken voice work out of just drama schools and executive spaces into self-help. I would say that I think I would only probably teach other voice teachers my method and style. Again, there are other voice teachers who work with things like fascia a bit and maybe nervous system, maybe not the same way as me, and we might have very different perspectives on it. So I can't say to your audience that every voice teacher is going to do exactly what I did. You can't expect that.
Right.
And you would have to trust their process and ask them. But I'd love to hold retreats where I work with them, maybe an osteopath, a movement professional, and then we work on it in like real life situations. Things like, how do you deliver feedback and maintain your power? How do you say no and maintain your power? How do you be powerful without coming across as cold?
Mm-hmm. And
how
that's,
do you have power?
Yeah, that's pivotal in the self-help space, as you're mentioning. So overall, that's kind of what let's say your 5-year plan, obviously not exactly 5 years, but that's kind of what you're envisioning, is to get more into the self-help space.
Exactly. And I think, unlike a lot of self-help work, like, don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's parts of it, and I'm not fully versed in a lot of the newer content. Some of it I am, some of it I'm not. But a lot of self-help work, in my view, wasn't practical enough.
Sure.
It was very mind. It wasn't body and voice.
What drew me to you when you mentioned self-help initially is I feel like that really ties well to what I had experienced roughly about 7 months ago, which was a psychedelic experience with ayahuasca. And you mentioned something a little bit earlier in the show when you see a child, of course, tell me if I pronounce this right, their larynges. Did I say larynges?
Larynx.
Their larynx are shorter, so of course their voice is louder, but the body is more relaxed. They almost have perfect posture. I know it from seeing my little ones. I admire their posture all the time when I see them sit up without a back on a chair.
Yeah.
And the way that I draw that to my psychedelic experience is it brings you back to that moment in your life when you had that split. And what I mean by that is there's a moment in everybody's life when they're 5 or 6, 10, whatever it is, where you were merged with your soul and you had something happen to you that eventually made you split. And you couldn't be one with yourself anymore, and you couldn't be grounded anymore. And it could be something negative, but it could also be something that was a positive event. One person at the retreat specifically mentioned when we were doing share time is when they were 6, 7 years old, mom said, grab some dishes from the cabinet and, set the dinner table. Well, the little 7-year-old dropped the plate on the floor. The plate shattered into pieces. And instead of mother yelling at her, mother handled it so well that for the rest of her life, she didn't feel like she was worthy of anybody. And she had to be brought back to that experience to watch it again and realize, well, to essentially forgive yourself for feeling that way about yourself and moving on and kind of closing that loop. So when you mention little kids being able to have their voice, I think there not only is something physically right with what you're saying with posture, but the other part of it is they haven't maybe experienced that moment in life yet that separated them from themselves from their soul. And that's why I find what you're saying so interesting, because it's right in the same space as kind of what we went through with the whole psychedelic experience in Costa Rica.
So what I find fascinating about that is, like, I can't speak to the portion of soul per se, but what I can speak to is how some of my clients and students might not feel as embodied or might not be as aware of being connected to themselves in that way, the sensing of.
Yeah.
And I think this work, if done in certain ways, again, I can't speak to the way other teachers frame their work, you should come back and build more proprioception, so knowing where you are in space, and interoception, feeling in your body. And that reconnecting with yourself, in my opinion, that internal landscape, the interoception, feeling in your body, a lot of the time solves ongoing issues unlike necessarily the mind. I think that there's the mind and the body, yin and yang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm from Minnesota. Whatever.
Yang is the Chinese way of saying it.
Oh, okay.
Yin and yang.
Okay.
And the head and the body. And what a lot of therapists want to learn from me is what they would call the somatic practice that I do, the body-based practice. Because even an osteopath I was working with recently, they said to me, it's fascinating how much changes when you do this body stuff in their confidence when they speak. Mm-hmm. It's not about the mind anymore. Once the body sorted itself out, the mind sorted itself out as well. So it's like the opposite way in. And I would say from what you're speaking about is how do people reconnect with their bodies and or spirit? And then how does that integrate into the mind versus it always being about the mind?
Yes, exactly. And I think what you've laid out today is incredibly beneficial for anybody that's been through the path that I've walked as far as the psychedelic experience is kind of important to find your voice. That's part of the whole integration process. We talk so much about integration and how important it is, because this isn't something that you're going to do for the rest of your life, is go, to another country and go drink some medicine. Is after that 5 to 7 days, you still got to come home and there's still bills to pay. There's still, the everyday situations you have to deal with. You still have your job. You still have, let's say, your nagging wife, whatever it could be. Right. And I think this voice thing that you're doing is incredibly impactful, because for a lot of people like myself, I feel like it could be used in the integration process. So I just want to thank you for sharing everything that you did today.
No worries.
I'm really grateful for it. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. I wanted to give your listeners a bit of like an exclusive thing. So on my website, I will be putting up a pre-sale list of only 1,000 copies that will be sold before everyone else that they'll have access to. So I'll send that to you in the show notes as well. Okay. But yeah, no, it's been great. And I've really enjoyed chatting with you.
Yes. And just for the audience, if you're still listening, like, comment, subscribe. I'll have all of Sam's social media handles in the description. Feel free to follow him on any platform. You mentioned Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. Anything that I'm missing?
I think those are the main ones for now. I don't really tend to like social media, but I'm doing it for all you beautiful people out there.
Yeah, it's a what's the word? A necessary evil for people like us trying to build our own brand, right?
Totally.
Yes. All right, Sam. Well, thank you again. If you're still listening, like, comment, subscribe. Hope you enjoyed.